Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. And these guys have really made their name when it comes to the New England hazy type IPAs, and this is one of their latest releases from what I gather. So for this one then we are going to go to a little place called Nora, which is just a little bit to the north of Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Apex Brewing Company. This must be reviewing like number 12 or so that I've done from these guys, at least I lose track. But for this one we are having a taste of the Hoax. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is another double IPA of the New England hazy type variety, of course. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. The last beer that I reviewed from these guys was the Tender Abuse, and as I mentioned in the last video, both of these beers were bought from Glassbanken.se. So, you know, this is an online service that you can order beer from through Sweden. Their warehouse is in Denmark. They've got a really good selection these days actually, and the customer service and things is really good. I do find it a little touch expensive though. I mean, you are paying a little bit more than Danish prices and things, and Danish prices already are quite expensive for craft beer. But as I say, good selection there. Very fast delivery times and stuff like that, so you know, it's kind of up to you what you would want out of this. But yeah, they've got some really nice Apex beers on there all the time. They always get the new Apex stuff. They've got a good selection of Danish and Americans and things like that, so it is definitely worth checking out actually. And I bought this beer on Black Friday along with another 5 because they had free postage, so I thought, well, why not, let's have a few new beers from Apex. They haven't released anything through Systembolaget in quite a little while actually, so fingers crossed that starts to change in early 2021. It would be nice to see more Apex beers getting out there, of course. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one. As I say, the last one was the Tender Abuse. That was very good, so fingers crossed this one follows in the same vein. And as I've said in other videos, when it comes to Apex, you are pretty much guaranteed a good New England IPA. It's really difficult to actually distinguish between all of them at some stage, to be honest with you. But you know, if you like this style, then this is a brewery that you definitely want to check out actually. I always enjoy trying the new beers that these guys are releasing because they've always got different hops and things in them, which is always good. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one, and definitely nice to return it to Apex Brewing once again. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Apex Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you guys show the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Apex Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you already, Apex Brewing Company are based in Nora, to the north of Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, and this company was founded back in 2017 by Daniel Gatchitz and Niklas Lundgren. So both of these guys are musicians. Niklas played in the band 59 Times the Pain, while Daniel played in The Voice of a Generation, and now of course they do a lot of stuff with their brewery. But Daniel and Niklas are responsible for the brewing operations, but there are a few others in the company as well as shareholders. So this is Leif Karlsson, Ola Eriksson and Roger Hjelm, and these guys really kind of take care of the business side of things, from what I gather. But these guys started off with a small 500 litre brew kit and 6 fermentation tanks, and they were selling their beers in the local area before eventually getting them into Systembolaget. I believe it was the single hop was the first one that they got into Systembolaget, and you can still order that through the nationwide system actually. That's definitely worth checking out actually. But over the course of 2018 they brewed 35,000 litres of beer, and they did about 25 different varieties, all of which were IPAs, and then in the course of 2019 they brewed in the region of around 120,000 litres, and this year in 2020 they have brewed even more than that so far from what I gather. So yeah, a brewery that are constantly expanding, and they are starting to get their beers out there a little bit more. I know that some of the English guys have seen a few beers from Apex. I think some of the, I don't know if the Dutch guys, until I gave them one. I don't think the Dutch guys had had a go at any of the beers yet, actually. So yeah, these guys are starting to get their beers out there a little bit more, actually. So this is definitely a brewery that you want to keep an eye on if you are interested in the New England hazy IPAs. But as of December 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 50 different kinds of beer, and as I say, there's always a new release every couple of weeks, actually. So that number's only going to go up and up, actually. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Apex Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'll let you have a little look at the artwork first before we open it up. But as you can see, this one has another wee monkey on the top of it, actually. As I always say to you, with these Apex Brewing beers, they've always got this kind of artwork down here, and then you've got a different animal on the top, actually, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I do like the artwork. There you can see the Hoax double IPA. I don't know if the name of this beer is supposed to poke fun at those that don't think the COVID-19 pandemic is real. I don't know if that's why they've called it the Hoax Double IPA. Knowing these guys, it may well could be, but I don't want to put words in their mouth, of course. But yeah, maybe that is kind of poking a little bit of fun at that kind of rather silly idea that this whole pandemic is a bit of a sham. But yeah, this one does look pretty cool, actually. It's the standard artwork that you'll find from Apex Brewing Company. Usually it's very, very similar with a different animal and maybe a different background or something like that. But yeah, there you can see the monkey on the side there with the address of the brewery. And it says music, people and beer, which is always a good motto. Heavy metal is always great. But I think those bands that these guys played in were a bit more kind of punk rocky sort of thing. So yeah. But yeah, to tell you about the profile of this beer, because I did write that down in the notes as well, this one is hopped with Galaxy and then Citra, Mosaic and Amarillo Cryo. It's got a malt base of Maris Otter, Extra Pale, Naked Oats, Flaked Oats and Flaked Wheat, and it uses a WLP 66 London Fog yeast. So yeah, pretty good combinations. We've had this kind of combination, if you like, from Apex Brewing before. I don't know about the exact hop combination right enough, but you know, we know these hops pretty well. Galaxy, lovely big hop from Australia. Lots of passion fruit and things like that. Very, very pungent hop. Citra, we know, lots of mangoes. 14% alpha acid. Lots of little tropical fruit complexities as well. Simcoe, very soft passion fruity notes in a New England IPA like this. About 12% if I remember rightly. One of the original, well, I suppose all three of those hops are the kind of original high alpha acid hops, and then you've got Amarillo as well with its lovely big oily orangey character. So all three of those in cryo, three of the OG high alpha acid hops in this one, along with the new, well, the newer Australian Galaxy. Galaxy has been on the go for quite a little while, actually. But yeah, lovely, lovely hop profile on this one, and I'll say straight away that when you open this beer, it comes across, you can smell that lovely big fruity character. 440ml can, incidentally, and I think I paid 90 Swedish kroners for this one, so about €9. That will be about, you know, £7.50, something like that perhaps, and yeah, about $10 for the can. So like I say, Glassbank and Punkt.se is a bit more expensive. You would probably pay 50 or 60 Swedish kroners for this through Systembolaget. The markup, of course, is pretty high actually on Glassbank, but then you've got logistics and all of this, and remember that Systembolaget is run as a kind of non-profit almost, basically. So yeah, that is something you have to consider when you're buying from Glassbanken, but it is nice to do it every so often, I have to say, even though it is a bit more expensive than Danish prices. Yeah, nice looking beer, this one, I have to say. When we shine the light through this, remember this one is it's not the haziest and soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs I've come across for 8%ers. Remember, this one is an 8% double New England IPA. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, of course, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. The head, incidentally, when the beer poured, was about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of perfect white head, but it has just dissipated now to leave a very kind of thin foamy layer and a nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, I would say that this is very much along the lines of like a pineapple juice or something like that. This one, it's not the palest that I've come across right enough, but it's definitely one of the more kind of pale coloured New Englands that I've come across recently. And for a New England double, as I say, this is not the soupiest and gloopiest of them that you're going to come across. But yeah, it certainly looks the part, actually. I like how this one goes together. But as I say, it doesn't matter whether it's it doesn't matter how hazy it is. It's whether it tastes good or not. And remember, the colour of these beers depends on two things. It's the type of malts that you use and the length of boil. So I'm guessing that this one may well be it's probably a 90-minute boil, I would think. And you know, the malts in this one, what was it? It was the Maris Otter Extra Pale Naked Oats. Yeah, it's all kind of sort of white malts that are in this one, if you like. So yeah, not surprising that this beer has turned out quite light in its colour. But at 8%, you know, the thing that this really tells you, if it's not madly hazy, is the oat content and the wheat content is not as high as some other ones. So maybe they are relying more on kind of barley malt in this. It's always interesting to think about these things when you're looking at these beers. But yeah, it certainly looks the part for a New England IPA, this one. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we got on. Nothing too surprising about the appearance of this one. So, aroma time. Ooh, yeah, that smells very nice. The aroma of this beer is actually quite similar in its malty character to the Tender Abuse. It's, as I said, when I reviewed the Tender Abuse, it had been quite a while since I had an IPA from Apex. So yeah, you can smell with this one. It is actually, it comes at, the more you smell of it, it actually does become a little bit more balanced. But when you first go at it, you do get more of that kind of soft, white bready kind of character out of it, and that's the barley malt that's going to give you that rather than the oats and the wheat. When you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, definitely towards the back of the nose, you start to get those more wheaty, bitey notes out of it, which is quite nice. But yeah, on the kind of, how'd you say, on the oaty side of things, when you get the aroma in the middle of your nose, you do actually get an almost kind of sweetness out of the oats, which I think is really quite nice actually. I like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, you do get a lovely oaty kind of sweetness out of this one, which I think is great. I really like that about this beer, I have to say. So yeah, the oaty character that comes out of this one, it starts to grow, I think, the more and more that you go into it. But yeah, as I say, soft white bready base to this beer. You get a bit of the smoother oats in the middle of the nose, and you get a wee bit of a kind of, you do get a little bit of that wheaty bitiness towards the back of the nose. And I think the more that you smell this one, I think the oats start to come out a little bit more, and you do start to get a wee touch of an almost like, you do get a little tiny hint of a slightly brown sugary note out of this one, but mainly soft white bread. The oats, I think, are the most prominent component, and then a bit of the bitey wheatiness at the back of the nose. That covers the malty side of the aroma. So I would say that there's also a little bit of a yeasty character to this one. And one thing that you have to be careful of with these beers, if you do smell a little bit of an almost kind of farmhousey type thing, sometimes that can be from older hops. It was actually one of the Swedish guys on Instagram that I talked to. I forget which one it was now, because there's 2 or 3 of them that I speak to actually, that watch the reviews, and they were telling me that it was, you know, sometimes you can get that slightly farmhousey, grainy sort of thing from older hops, and there's a teeny little bit of that in this, I have to say. In this one I do get just a teeny little bit of that almost kind of farmhousey, kind of herbally kind of thing out of this. So maybe the you know, I think all 3 of the hops, I think the Citra, Amarillo and Mosaic in this one are cryo, which is made, I think if I remember rightly, cryo is more that you just add like the oil into the beer. You know, they extract the oil with freezing it basically, whereas I think the Galaxy in this one is fresh, so maybe the Galaxy hasn't been its ultimate freshness, if you like. So there is a wee, you will notice in the back of the nose with this one, there is a wee bit of a kind of herbally, vegetally, farmhousey sort of thing. I do get a little hint of that in this beer, but we have had this in IPAs before and it doesn't hinder the flavour and stuff too much, so I wouldn't worry too much about that actually. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, otherwise, you do get a tiny little bit of earthiness out of this one. You get a nice big floral aromaticity, and then there's a bit of lighter grassiness in there. Overall, I would say that the green side of the beer in this one, it's got a good kind of quite bright floral aromatic note in it, but I would say that it's quite well balanced between the floral side of things and the grassy side of things actually. So I would definitely make that point about this beer. It seems to be fairly well balanced in that sense. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make about this one. But what I will say is the fruits come across as really, really juicy in this one actually. So that's what's striking me about this beer thus far. So yeah, with this one, good little bit of passion fruit out of it. There's a nice wee bit of a kind of pineapple-y, and I do get a nice little bit of a sort of pineapple-y note out of this, and I think that's probably the galaxy there. So you get stronger passion fruit out of it. You do get that softer mango-y. You do get that softer mango and passion fruit kind of note, and that's the Citra Cryo and the Simcoe Cryo that are going to give you that. I think the more pungent passion fruit that you get out of this one is from the Galaxy, and the pineapple as well will be from the Galaxy too. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is actually, on the fruity side of things, is very, very nice. You don't get too much in the way of the complexities from the Citra in this one, I think. Sometimes Citra, of course, can give you a hell of a lot of complexities, but I don't get so much of that in this beer. On the very tip of the nose, you do get a little bit of a kind of lemony. I think there is a wee bit of a lemony zesty character to this one, but behind that you can smell the more oily, orangey characters of the Amarillo Cryo in there as well. But I think in fairness as well with the Cryo, this is an interesting point, because I don't think the Amarillo in the Cryo comes across as oily as it would straight off the flower of the pellets. So that's a very interesting thing to point out about this beer as well. The fruits come across as very, very juicy, and almost quite a little bit more pungent actually. So that's maybe the interesting thing to point out. Maybe the Cryo hops, they don't come across as quite as oily, but they come across as a little bit more kind of juicy and things like that. So that's a really interesting point that I haven't noticed before. I'll need to keep an eye on other beers in the future, particularly ones that have Cryo and things going on with the hops, and just see if I notice that again. So yeah, I'll try and remember that going forward. But it smells like a really solid double IPA with this one. We wouldn't expect anything less of Apex Brewing, of course. But there's just a few other things coming into my mind with this one. So yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one and see how we get on. So yeah, this is the Hoax Double IPA coming in at 8% ABV from Apex Brewing Company in Nora, to the north of Örebro, in pretty much in the middle of Sweden almost, just out to the west of Stockholm. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, that is very, very nice. It's got a lovely oiliness to it, and that's the weird thing, you know. I was saying a second ago with the aroma, I don't find the fruits as oily in this one, in the aroma of this one, as I have in others. But then when you taste it, this beer is definitely a little bit more oily and slick than the Tender Abuse was. That's a really interesting point, you know. This is one of the things that you can. This is why I like doing these reviews, you know. You'll get stuff that you'll think, all right, okay, maybe it's going to be like that, and then it just throws you completely, to be honest. And this one has done that actually. I mean, the Tender Abuse was good, but I think I like this one a little bit better. And you know, when these guys are doing so many New England IPAs, you are going to get that. This one just strikes me a little bit more than the other one does actually. And I think because I like an oily IPA, I do like an oily IPA, and that's probably why this one just kind of strikes me a wee bit more. So yeah, this is another really, really good one in my mind. This one's definitely not as pungent and bitey, I don't think, as the Tender Abuse was. But this one, I think this one has a bit more of a slickness to it. So really, as I always say, beer is relative. Different people like different things. This one strikes me just a little touch more because of that oiliness. I like an oily slickness to my beer. But you know, I guess it to some degree it depends on what mood I'm in. And just at this point in time, the oiliness, I'm just like, ooh, you know, it's just how it goes. But yeah, it's another solid beer from Apex, so big thumbs up to them once again. Let's kind of examine this properly. Yeah, it's good. And that thing I was talking about with the sort of slightly off aromas, sometimes you will get that in beers, but as I say, in this one, in the flavour, you don't get that. It's kind of weird how that happens sometimes actually. You don't get that in this beer actually. But yeah, where to go with this one then? So middle of your palate then, you can feel that nice soft white bready quality just blanket in the middle of your palate. That's the Maris Otter Extra Pale in there. That's forming the backbone of the beer. The breadiness, that white breadiness that has, it gets softer and softer the further you go into the aftertaste, and it's really, really interesting. When you go towards the back third of your palate, you can definitely feel that soft breadiness just thickening up a wee bit. There is a wee bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness to the beer as well. You do get just a little bit of that wheaty bitiness at the back, on the back of the palate there too, which is very nice. So yeah, I really like how that that part of it goes together as well. It's a very well balanced beer, this one. I think, you know, the malty side of it, and I always put a lot of emphasis on the malt. Maybe it's just being Scottish, we like our malts, you know, it's just me. Scottish sweet tooth, all of that kind of thing. But yeah, the malty side of this beer, it's very well balanced. It's a very smooth, more bready leaning New England IPA, this one. But you do get a bit of the oaty smoothness. In the middle of your palate, you can feel the sort of oaty smoothness just pushing its way out of this one. So you do get a lovely oaty smoothness just in the middle of this beer, actually, which is good. Yeah, the oaty smoothness kind of builds, but as I say, I think that the white bready notes are the most kind of dominant thing in here, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's it really just, it comes, this whole thing, it's one of these things where the malty base just fits together very, very well. You've got a wee bit of wheaty bitiness at the back, you've got a wee bit of oaty smoothness right in the centre of your palate. There's a tiny little bit of a Werther's Original kind of flavour in the very centre of your palate to cover up the booze, but that's quite minimal. I will say that's quite minimal. But in the middle of the palate, for me, it is very, very, very smooth and soft and white bready. Maybe that's the effect of using flaked oats rather than, as well as the straight up oats, because I think they have got straight up oat in this as well. The naked oats, I think naked oats is just whole oats, to be honest with you. So yeah, you really get, it's got a lovely smoothness to it, this beer, and the oiliness, I think, from the cryo hops gives it a bit more slickness, which is really interesting, but we'll come to that now. Let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer. So yeah, back corners of the palate, there is a tiny little bit of earthiness there, as you always get, but as you move further forward, it does develop a wee bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach, pardon me, as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate there, it really does have quite a little bit of a pungent floral aromaticity, actually. So I really like how that goes together. So yeah, nice little bit of a floral aromaticity there. It's not the most aromatic one that I've come across, and not the most kind of pungent aromaticity there, but it does get a wee bit more pungent on the sides of the tongue the further you go into the aftertaste. Round the front curve of the tongue though, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy in my mind, and then on the front third of your palate, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters come out of the beer. And as I said, I think this beer is slightly more oily compared to some of the other ones I've had from Apex in the past, and I would suspect that that's because 3 of the hops in this are cryo, actually. So yeah, that probably could be the reason. But yeah, let's talk about the fruity side of this beer then. So on that front third of your tongue, if you go towards the back of the front third of your tongue, you get a nice wee bit of that stronger passion fruit, but then that will be from the Galaxy, and I guess the Citra will be contributing to that a little bit as well. But as you move further forward, you can feel it very quickly gets quite oily. To be honest with you, it does get oily quite quickly, and that, I think, I suspect is from the cryo treatment of the hops, and you know, using the oils instead. But yeah, as you move further forward, you start to get this the slightly softer passion fruit, which will be the Simcoe. Then you get the mangoes in there, and then I think the mangoes actually, this kind of, it's almost like the two are blended together, but it moves forward quite a bit. Then just as you reach like the front third of your tongue, if that makes sense, then you start to get the more oily orangey notes from the Amarillo coming out of it as well. It does feel as if on top of that kind of oily part at the front of the tongue, it does feel as if there's maybe a wee touch of like a pineapple-y note or something like that, and there's maybe a wee bit of a sort of slightly gooseberry-ish note underneath, to be honest with you. So it's interesting that you do, those are complexities that you would normally associate with Citra, actually, which is quite interesting. But yeah, on the very tip of the tongue there is a wee bit of a sort of lemony character to it. The beer does have a wee bit of a zestiness on the kind of very front tip of the tongue, I think. But yeah, it is a really nice, really nicely done beer, this one. As I say, it's quite a bit slicker than I remember some of the other ones being, and it's definitely more oily, I think, as well. But in terms of its flavour composition, it is really quite nice, actually. You know, flavour profile wise, it's probably not madly different from some of the other ones that you're going to come across from Apex. And I mean, they do tend to just stick to brewing the one style. I have to admit, that's something I would love to see Apex do, is expand the styles that they're brewing a little bit. I'd love to see them do some West Coast IPAs and some black IPAs rather than just stick into the New England hazies. But you know, in fairness, they make some really good examples of this style. So in some ways I would like to see it, in other ways I can understand why they haven't done it yet. But I would love to see these guys brew a few more things along with that. I'd love to see them do like a proper West Coast IPA, because they obviously know what they're doing with these. I'd love to see them perfect that with the kind of West Coasters as well. But yeah, this is definitely one of the more kind of oily and slicker New Englands that I've had from them, and I really like that about this beer. So in terms of the how do you say it? In terms of the mouthfeel of this one, then, because I think that's where this beer differs a little bit. I would say that this beer is kind of top end to mid bodied, bottom end to full bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. The beer overall, it doesn't really, it has more of a slickness to it and a slight oiliness rather than being kind of creamy and things compared to some of the other ones, I think. But yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness, what are we going to say about this? Yeah, this beer's not really all that bitter, to be honest. Maybe about 20 IBUs, something like that. Very, very low bitterness IPA, this one in my mind. 30 at the absolute most. But yeah, lovely juicy and oily fruity character to it, this one. I certainly like how this beer's gone together, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. This one struck me a little bit more, just I like the mouthfeel of this one a little bit better than I did the Tender Abuse, but both are very, very solid IPAs, but that's not a surprise based on my previous experiences with this brewery. So thumbs up to them once again, and hopefully they do start to release their beers through Systembolaget again soon, because I did see that there were a few other IPAs released from them recently that I would be quite curious about, but they came out right after I made my order, so that was a bit annoying. But yeah, what can you do? So yeah, let's leave it at that for this review. Another very, very nice New England double IPA from Apex Brewing Company, and that's what we've come to expect over the years. Stupidly drinkable for an 8%er, but we always say that about these things from Apex. But yeah, my message to the brewery would be, please have a go at some West Coasters. It would be nice to see you guys diversify a little bit, but New England IPA is always absolutely solid. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Apex Brewing as well. We will return to these guys at some point fairly soon. But yeah, this was a really interesting one to review, and it was nice to return to them after quite a little while. Until I reviewed the Tender Abuse, it was about 6 months since I reviewed an Apex beer for you here, which is too long, definitely too long. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Apex Brewing Company, have a look at Glassbanking if you're interested, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers.